Abraham Bram Stoker was an Irish author, best known today for his 1897 Gothic novel Dracula. During his lifetime, he was better known as the personal assistant of actor Henry Irving and business manager of the Lyceum Theatre in London, which Irving owned. Early life. Stoker was born on 8 November 1847 at 15 Merino Crescent, Clontarf, on the north side of Dublin, Ireland. His parents were Abraham Stoker from Dublin and Charlotte Matilda Blake Thornley, who was raised in County Sligo. Stoker was the third of 7 children, the eldest of whom was Sir Thornley Stoker, 1st Bt. Abraham and Charlotte were members of the Church of Ireland parish of Clontarf and attended the parish church with the children, who were baptized there. Stoker was bedridden with an unknown illness until he started school at the age of 7, when he made a complete recovery. Of this time, Stoker wrote, "I was naturally thoughtful, and the leisure of long illness gave opportunity for many thoughts which were fruitful according to the kind in later years." Quote, he was educated in a private school run by the Rev. William Woods. After his recovery, he grew up without further serious illnesses, even excelling as an athlete at Trinity College, Dublin, which he attended from 1864 to 1870. He graduated with honours as a B.A. in mathematics. He was auditor of the College Historical Society and president of the University Philosophical Society, where his first paper was on sensationalism in fiction and society. Early career. Stoker became interested in the theatre while a student through his friend Drive Mornsell. He became the theatre critic for the Dublin Evening Mail, co-owned by the author of Gothic tales Sheridan Le Fanu. Theatre critics were held in low esteem, but he attracted notice by the quality of his reviews. In December 1876, he gave a favourable review of Henry Irving's Hamlet at the Theatre Royal in Dublin. Irving invited Stoker for dinner at the Shelburne Hotel where he was staying, and they became friends. Stoker also wrote stories, and The Crystal Cup was published by the London Society in 1872, followed by The Chain of Destiny, in 4 parts in the Shamrock, in 1876 while a civil servant in Dublin. Stoker wrote the non-fiction book The Duties of Clerks of Petty Sessions in Ireland, which remained a standard work. Furthermore, he possessed an interest in art, and was a founder of the Dublin Sketching Club in 1874. Lyceum Theatre. In 1878, Stoker married Florence Balcombe, daughter of Lieutenant Colonel James Balcombe of 1 Merino Crescent. She was a celebrated beauty whose former suitor was Oscar Wilde. Stoker had known Wilde from his student days, having proposed him for membership of the university's Philosophical Society while he was president. Wilde was upset at Florence's decision, but Stoker later resumed the acquaintanceship, and after Wilde's fall visited him on the continent. The Stokers moved to London, where Stoker became acting manager and then business manager of Irving's Lyceum Theatre, London, a post he held for 27 years. On the 31st of December 1879, Bram and Florence's only child was born, a son whom they christened Irving Noel Thornley Stoker. The collaboration with Henry Irving was important for Stoker, and through him he became involved in London's high society, where he met James Abbott McNeill Whistler and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Working for Irving, the most famous actor of his time, and managing one of the most successful theatres in London made Stoker a notable if busy man. He was dedicated to Irving, and his memoirs show he idolized him. In London, Stoker also met Hall Caine, who became one of his closest friends. He dedicated Dracula to him. In the course of Irving's tours, Stoker traveled the world, although he never visited Eastern Europe, a setting for his most famous novel. Stoker enjoyed the United States States, where Irving was popular. With Irving he was invited twice to the White House, and knew William McKinley and Theodore Roosevelt. Stoker set two of his novels there, using Americans as characters, the most notable being Quincy Morris. He also met one of his literary idols, Walt Whitman. Writings. Stoker visited the English town of Whitby in 1890, and that visit is said to be part of the inspiration of his great novel Dracula. He began writing novels while manager for Henry Irving and secretary and director of London's Lyceum Theatre, beginning with The Snake's Pass in 1890 and Dracula in 1897. During this period, Stoker was part of the literary staff of the Daily Telegraph in London, and he wrote other fiction, including the horror novels The Lady of the Shroud and The Lair of the White Worm. He published his personal reminiscences of Henry Irving in 1906, after Irving's death, which proved successful, and managed productions at the Prince of Wales Theatre. Before writing Dracula, Stoker met Armand van Bury, a Hungarian writer and traveller. Dracula likely emerged from van Bury's dark stories of the Carpathian Mountains. Stoker then spent several years researching European folklore and mythological stories of vampires. Dracula is an epistolary novel, written as a collection of realistic but completely fictional diary entries, telegrams, letters, ships' logs, and newspaper clippings, all of which added a level of detailed realism to the story, a skill which Stoker had developed as a newspaper writer. At the time of its publication, Dracula was considered a straightforward horror novel based on imaginary creations of supernatural life. It gave form to a universal fantasy and became a part of popular culture. According to the Encyclopedia of World Biography, Stoker's stories are today included in the categories of horror fiction, romanticized Gothic stories, and melodrama. Quote, "They are classified alongside other works of popular fiction, such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which also used the myth-making and storytelling method of having multiple narrators telling the same tale from different perspectives. According to historian Jules Zanger, they can't all be lying, thinks the reader." The original 541-page manuscript of Dracula was believed to have been lost until it was found in a barn in northwestern Pennsylvania in the early 1980s. It included a typed manuscript with many corrections, and handwritten on the title page was "The UN Dead." The author's name was shown at the bottom as Bram Stoker. Author Robert Latham remarked, "The most famous horror novel ever published, its title changed at the last minute." The manuscript was purchased by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. Stoker's inspirations for the story, in addition to Whitby, may have included a visit to Slains Castle in Aberdeenshire, a visit to the crypts of St Michan's Church in Dublin, and the novella Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. Stoker's original research notes for the novel are kept by the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A facsimile edition of the notes was created by Elizabeth Miller and Robert Bisang in 1998. Death. After suffering a number of strokes, Stoker died at No. 26 St George's Square on the 20th of April 1912. Some biographers attribute the cause of death to tertiary syphilis, others to overwork. He was cremated, and his ashes were placed in a display urn at Golders Green Crematorium. After the death of Stoker's son, Irving Noel Stoker, in 1961, Irving's ashes were added to the urn. The original plan had been to keep his parents' ashes together, but after Florence Stoker's death, her ashes were scattered at the Gardens of Rest. Visitors to Stoker's urn at Golders Green are escorted to the room as a precaution against vandalism. Beliefs and philosophy. Stoker was raised a Protestant in the Church of Ireland. He was a strong supporter of the Liberal Party and took a keen interest in Irish affairs. As a philosophical Home Ruler, he supported Home Rule for Ireland brought about by peaceful means. He remained an ardent monarchist who believed that Ireland should remain within the British Empire, an entity that he saw as a force for good. He was an admirer of Prime Minister William Ewart Gladstone, whom he knew personally, and supported his plans for Ireland. Stoker believed in progress and took a keen interest in science and science-based medicine. Some Stoker novels represent early examples of science fiction, such as The Lady of the Shroud. He had a writer's interest in the occult, notably mesmerism, but despised fraud and believed in the superiority of the scientific method over superstition. Stoker counted among his friends J. W. Brodie Innes, a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and hired member Pamela Coleman Smith as an artist for the Lyceum Theatre, but no evidence suggests that Stoker ever joined the order himself. Posthumous. The short story collection Dracula's Guest and Other Weird Stories was published in 1914 by Stoker's widow, Florence Stoker, who was also his literary executrix. The first film adaptation of Dracula was F. W. Murnau's Nosferatu, released in 1922, with Max Schreck starring as Count Orlok. Florence Stoker eventually sued the filmmakers, and was represented by the attorneys of the British Incorporated Society of Authors. Her chief legal complaint was that she had neither been asked for permission for the adaptation nor paid any royalty. The case dragged on for some years, with Miss Stoker demanding the destruction of the negative and all prints of the film. The suit was finally resolved in the widow's favor in July 1925. A single print of the film survived, however, and it has become well known. The first authorized film version of Dracula did not come about until almost a decade later, when Universal Studios released Todd Browning's Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi. Canadian writer Dacre Stoker, a great-grandnephew of Bram Stoker, decided to write a sequel that bore the Stoker name, to re-establish creative control over the original novel, with encouragement from screenwriter Ian Holt, because of the Stokers' frustrating history with Dracula's copyright. In 2009, Dracula, the Undead was released, written by Dacre Stoker and Ian Holt, both writers based on Bram Stoker's own handwritten notes for characters and plot threads excised from the original edition, along with their own research for the sequel. This also marked Dacre Stoker's writing debut. In spring 2012, Dacre Stoker presented the Lost Dublin Journal written by Bram Stoker, which had been kept by his great-grandson Noel Dobbs. Stoker's diary entries shed a light on the issues that concerned him before his London years. A remark about a boy who caught flies in a bottle might be a clue for the later development of the Renfield character in Dracula. On the 8th of November 2012, Stoker was honored with a Google Doodle on Google's homepage commemorating his 165th birthday. An annual festival takes place in Dublin, the birthplace of Bram Stoker, in honor of his literary achievements. The 2014 Bram Stoker Festival encompassed literary, film, family, street, and outdoor events, and ran from 24 to 27 October in and around Dublin City. The festival is supported by the Bram Stoker Estate and funded by Dublin City Council and Fáilte Ireland. Stoker was portrayed by Paul Ritter on an episode of the 2016 television drama Houdini in Amp Doyle. Bibliography. Novels: The Primrose Path, The Snake's Pass, The Waters Mou, The Shoulder of Shasta, Dracula, Miss Batty, The Mystery of the Sea, The Jewel of Seven Stars, The Man, Lady Atheline, The Lady of the Shroud. The Lair of the White Worm, short story collections Under the Sunset, comprising 8 fairy tales for children, Snowbound, The Record of a Theatrical Touring Party, Dracula's Guest and Other Weird Stories, Uncollected Stories Non-Fiction, The Duties of Clerks of Petty Sessions in Ireland, A Glimpse of America, Personal Reminiscences of Henry Irving, Famous Impostors, Bram Stoker's Notes for Dracula, a facsimile edition Bram Stoker annotated and transcribed by Robert 18 Bisang and Elizabeth Miller, foreword by Michael Barsanti, Jefferson NC and AMP, London, McFarland, ISBN 9780786434107. Articles: The Question of a National Theatre, The 19th Century and After, Volume. LXIII, January-June 1908. Mr. De Morgan's Habits of Work, The World's Work, Volume 16, May-October 1908. The Censorship of Fiction, The 19th Century and After, Volume. LXIV, July-December 1908. The Censorship of Stage Plays, The 19th Century and After, Volume. LXVI, July-December 1909. Irving and Stage Lightning, The 19th Century and After, Volume. LXIX, January-June 1911. Critical Works on Stoker, William Hughes. Beyond Dracula, ISBN 0-312-23136-9. Belford, Barbara. Bram Stoker, A Biography of the Author of Dracula. London, Weidenfeld and Nicholson, 1996. SENF, Carroll. Science and Social Science in Bram Stoker's Fiction. SENF, Carroll. Dracula, Between Tradition and Modernism. SENF, Carroll A. Bram Stoker. Bibliographies: William Hughes, Bram Stoker, Victorian Fiction Research Guide.